Episode 3, the school shrinks. How you guys going? What's going on with you guys?
Hey, Chris.
What's going on, y'all?
Oh, nothing much. How's you guys in your life? How's everything going? Sorry, we had some technical difficulties getting started up this morning, but you guys were fine. I was not.
Startup problems.
Startup problems. That's right, Joel, right?
I blame the morning. It's the morning time, so I'll blame that on it not being ready. The technology is not fully awake yet.
No.
Not caffeinated.
It's not caffeinated yet. I need an external hard drive to bump it up. So for our people who are watching, we have a text chat that we have going on between the three of us, and Brook sent out an interesting article the other day about things that we should bring back that what your parents did, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and
we'll talk about it one day. We'll do an episode about it.
Do a full episode, but it made me think, and I just want to ask you guys, what's something you could bring back from your childhood? It doesn't have to be an object or something, but maybe an event or something you could do. Like, for instance, for me, like just being outside all day and just playing with my friends and doing whatever and getting into mischief, we'll say, but also not telling my parents where I am at all for like 8 hours straight. Just knowing just the idea of like be back at dinner time. And that's not a thing that I don't think happens anymore. And I don't think I will do that with my child, to be honest with you.
Is your kid growing up in the same city that you grew up in?
Yep.
Yeah, and you feel different about that.
I don't know why though. Is it because you think culture? Does it instill fear into me?
Yeah, so there's actually a study about this, and I'll have to dig it up. A guy did a dissertation, and he went into this community up in the Northeast, and he followed these kids around all like for a whole year and tracked like the locations that they went around town. And then he went back a generation later, and everybody who was in his study in the dissertation had kids at that time. And so he followed those kids around a generation later, and he found that the transiency or the distance that those kids went during that second study was significantly less from home from their home base than the parents did originally the generation earlier. And so he sought to find out, why was this? And a lot of the parents did cite it was because of crime or, they were worried that culture had changed, time had changed. So then the next thing he did is he went and looked into criminal records, and it was actually a safer community the generation later. So I think it's really I'll have to go dig it up for us one time and get you the real findings there. But I think a lot of it is your perception.
Yeah, isn't it? And do you think it's just because we're inundated with stuff these days?
That could be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
More exposure to the local news, stuff like that, maybe.
Well, it's at your fingertips. I don't have to wait till 5:30 at night to watch it anymore, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people have literally 5 or 6 devices going at once with news alerts about this and about that. So, you could probably become quite like, I don't want my kids leaving, just play video games and, So, yeah. But one thing that I do miss, though, and it actually talked about this a little bit in the article, too, is about running through the sprinklers and stuff. Yeah. Because, it's summertime, and, sometimes you see kids out doing that. And it, of course, brings the nostalgia of being a child running through the sprinklers and not wanting to get too wet because it was still cold. The water was cold and stuff. But, it was refreshing at the same time because it was hot outside. But I do miss that, and watching the television too as a family, like watching movies and things like that, because this was of course around the time where we had the Hollywoods and the Blockbusters, and you would go get the DVD or the VHS and watch it together. So that was fun. I miss that.
Did you make slip and slides out of like black tarp and had to do your own slip and slide in the backyard with dish soap and water hose?
Absolutely. Big black trash bags and absolutely.
Experience. I I've kept a lot of stuff from my childhood. I don't know why. I guess I thought
But
that at some
but
point.
but
Go ahead, Chris.
just knowing you now, Brooke, you're a bit of a hoarder, though, right?
Yeah, I do. I keep a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
So, and
yeah,
you will stop on the side of the road to grab something, right?
you know me well. So my
Right.
neighbor puts a lot of stuff on his curb to throw away, like on Sunday nights. But I don't ever go over there to look. So
Oh,
so
you don't do like the peeping through the blinds, but like
no,
looking at what's on
no.
the corner.
I've made progress in my therapy. So, but no, I still have my original bicycle that I rode when I was a kid, and I think that's something that I would bring back because I used to could do tricks and wheelies and stunts and stuff on them. So I would bring that back. Like I would. If
Yeah.
I could bring back a skill, that would be something I would bring back.
Well,
I mean, I could probably still ride it right now, but I could only pedal.
yeah. Well, isn't it hard to ride those ones that have the big front wheels and the small little ones like you had when you were a kid?
That's not what I'm talking about.
It's hard to get pegs on those, right, man?
Exactly.
Oh, that's good. So
Oh man.
I used to beg my mom for a bike with pegs on it. Also, now knowing I can't do anything with it, I just wanted them on there because I felt like that was an accessory and like oh my god, you see Chris, he's got pegs. Can he grind? No, not at all. But we all ride on his bike though, up and down the thing. So I know it's a cool.
Sit on the handlebars and put our feet on those pegs.
Oh, yeah, you try to find like little jumps, little speed bumps in your neighborhood, and like go fast, and you just kind of just nail yourself on the handlebars instead of doing anything special. Oh yeah, bikes are awesome.
Brooke, you should take your bike, ride it across the street to your neighbor who puts the stuff out there on the lawn, and just to give yourself a little taste of what it felt like to be on that bike.
Who
we
was
watched
the?
we watched the Sandlot the other day. I don't know if you remember this movie about the kids who they played baseball all day every summer, just in the and the scene where they're swimming at the neighborhood pool and one of them
Windy
fakes
peppercorn.
Yes. I'd bring that back.
Oh man. But the kid who rode the bike in most movies is always like a really cool kid. Who's the Bad News Bears? Who was like Kelly Leak, right? Was it Kelly Leak?
No.
So
I'm bad
in
at that
Bad News
stuff.
Bears, it was the cool kid that like smoked cigs at like 13. He like rode up on his bike in front of everybody, and it was like the coolest thing in the world. And you're like, oh dang, he's got a bike and stuff like that. But I just imagine how you were back in the day, Brooke.
Brooke was that guy.
Yeah, Brooke was that guy. If you listen to our podcast, you know some things about Brooke did in his past. You can go listen to that, Task Talks, and kind of hear those things. So.
And there's still more. There's still more to come.
Well, speaking of stories, we have another new segment that we're bringing in. It's called Story Time with Somebody Here. And Joel has a very good story that he wants to tell us about. I don't know if it's relevant to anything that we're talking about today, but I do know it's probably a good story. So, Joel, take it away.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to condense this down. But yeah, it's not relevant to school psychology or education. But since it is summertime, everybody's getting back to traveling and getting on planes and trains and automobiles. I thought that I would tell a story about my time in another country. This was actually December 2019, and I was actually in this particular location for only like a day and a half. And so I wanted to do like a little day tour and stuff. So I hired this driver to take me around and stuff. And it was going great at first. And then until he dropped me off at this one particular location. And I was looking like a typical tourist. I was, Snapchatting and videoing away. And so this little 10-year-old 11-year-old girl runs up to me, grabs my hand, and like starts putting like henna tattoos on my hand. I'm like, at first I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And so I was like, I just let her because I'm like, okay, I'll give her a couple of bucks or something like that. So she finishes my henna tattoo, and I try to give her like a few little, dollars or something. And then she says, no, and then puts out her hand like this. And I'm like, whoa, this 10-year-old is literally about to beat me up. And so I tried to give her a few more. No. And she's like having a full-blown tantrum. And so the only like other bill I had was like a $10 bill. So I give that to her. And then she skips off all happy and stuff and talks to her little associates and stuff
Her
like that.
associates.
Yeah, her associate, because I'm like, they're all giggling. Hey. And so then I'll go down to the little beach area thinking that, okay, well, I gotta bring myself down from that, experience of almost getting headlocked. And so I'm enjoying the little beach area. And then this guy comes up and he's making small talk and all this stuff. And then I'm just like, okay, I already know what we're about to do here. So he starts telling me about how he got onto a ship and escaped his country, and now he's here, and now blah 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 and stuff. And I'm just waiting for him to get to the part where we're asking for money. And he says, yeah, I've just escaped. And granted, he's speaking like really good English, probably even better English than I do. And I'm like, oh yeah, you really just escaped from your country and just got on this boat. And so I'm like, okay, well, it was nice to meet you and everything. And then he says, oh yeah, so I'm trying to get on this boat to get to the next destination. Do you have like some money and this or that? And I'm like, no, I sure don't. And like his whole demeanor just changes. And yeah, and I was just like, oh gosh. And then he was like, are you here? Are you here by yourself? And I'm like, no, I'm
Don't
with a
answer that. Don't answer that, Joel.
I'm with a travel group. And he's just like, oh, okay, well, it was nice to meet you. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's nice to meet you too. So I'm walking down the way some more, just enjoying the little beach, get to the pier area. And I see these two ladies across the street. They were fighting. And, in some cultures, they're using their hands like it's like really animated. And I'm like, oh, they're like arguing. And so I'm like videotaping them. So two of them, they come across the street and then they're hitting me up for money. And one of them has said, I'm pregnant. And then she grabs my hand, puts my hand on her stomach and starts rubbing it. It says, I'm pregnant. I need money. I need money to help me. And I'm just like, are you freaking kidding? So I had a fanny pack and I just dumped a whole bunch of change just out on it. And she's like, oh, thank you and stuff. And it's just, it was scam row. It was just like, and then luckily my driver was like, oh, hey, and he's just like, yeah, those ladies are bad and stuff. I'm like, yeah, you think? Because I'm like,
I can't pay you anymore, man.
Yeah, I'm like, I pretty much, I can't give you a tip because I done, gave everything else, gave all of my money out. I mean, it goes on. I mean, it wasn't the only, like, we had other, like, places he took me and, went to, like, the mall and they were trying to, like, hoard there. And it was crazy. But it was fun. It was fun.
That's good. Well, it's your personality is so inviting and you're so friendly. They're like, no, this guy will definitely give us something.
Yeah, he will definitely give me the money that I'm desiring.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah, you did.
So yeah, if you're traveling, especially if you're going to another country, just don't look too much like a tourist, don't, and be safe. Have fun.
Do you have any questions about that, Brooke?
It kind of sounds like the county fair. When you're going through the prize rows, or the games, and everybody wants you to play their scam games and stuff. So
that's
like, you look like you're like Steph Curry. Come throw this in this giant hoop that's 30 feet away.
Yeah, right. And which the ball is too much larger than the hoop.
Yeah, like, oh, you were so close, man. Well, that's
exactly
story time with Joel.
Thank you.
Well, all right, so the main topic for today is Brooke had found this really interesting article that talks about misbehaving kids. And since we are school shrinks, we thought it might be a good idea to kind of discuss it and converse about it and kind of give our opinions on it. This will be something that we do on episodes where if we find a very interesting article and think it's relevant to our listeners and to what we do, and we can actually speak about it, we may bring it up and just have a conversation about it. So, Brooke, what did you find?
Yeah, so this is an article called Parent. It just popped up on like my phone, my feed. This is an article called "Raise Confident, Smart, and Empathetic Kids Do These 5 Things When Their Kids Misbehave." All right, so we're thinking about kids who turn out to be empathetic, to be a little bit more kind and confident and smarter. Here's what their parents do. And so first off, these parents focus on the behavior. So instead of labeling the child, they label the behavior. Let me give you an example. Raphael, instead of saying, Raphael, you're such a good kid, because that's labeling the child, they might say, Raphael, you did such a good job putting your toys back in the cubby. Okay. And so that's behavior specific. And what we'll see there is now the child is understanding that it's about their behavior that has a value rather than them as a person. Now that also has kind of a contrary effect. And contrary, when I say instead of labeling the child as a bad child, we can label the behavior. Raphael, I didn't like it when you hit your sister. And so again, we're being behavior specific there as opposed to person specific. So that might be one of these examples that parents who raise confident, empathetic, smart kids do. They focus on the behavior rather than the person or the child.
Well, I think what that also does is it takes away like good and bad kid, right? Type of thing. Because it's an action that we're talking about, not necessarily a child and what they did. Is that, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's exactly what you're saying. And I think what we want the kid to see is they're not the bad person. They're not the good person, but they have behaviors that can be attributed or characterized in that way.
Well, when we start developing schema of like, what is a good behavior and what is a bad behavior, and it's all obviously based around cultural and societal and like norms and stuff, right? Because it may be different for different people, but we don't want, and I think this kind of leans more towards one side than the other, but we don't want a kid just because they accidentally did something bad to think that they're a bad kid, right? Mm-hmm. The idea on what they actually did was bad, not them, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really good. I think it's really good. Sorry, Joel, you look like you're about to...
No, I was just about to say, I mean, that's such a good skill to even translate into the school. I mean, just even with like teachers and educators and just making sure that, we are providing that labeled praise for the behavior and not the student themselves. Oh, you're so bad, Timmy, or, this or that. But I think that, anything that they've done good in the class, labeling that behavior is more positive than the student.
Well, absolutely. And especially in a classroom, you don't want a kid to start thinking themselves as a bad kid, right? I mean, that's not what we're trying to do here. We have to understand what's right and wrong and what behaviors are right and wrong, but not which child is right and wrong, right? Exactly. So I think absolutely, Brooke, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to talk about on that one, or you want to move on to the next?
No. Move on.
All right, so the next one is use guilt, not shame. I will say that the person they refer to in this article is a huge person in our world that I love. I love his books. His name is Dr. Adam Grant. He's a professor of psychology, and what he says is that using a little guilt to correct your child's behavior is better than using shame. Right? So, for instance, what did you do? Right? Why did you do that? Instead of asking, why did you do a certain behavior? Because when you're saying, why did you do that? The child may start thinking, well, I'm a bad person. Like, why did I do that? Am I a bad person? Instead of identifying what the actual behavior was and then kind of focusing on that. For example, a child does something wrong. Shaming communicates to that child that what they did or that they may be, shaming is not a good person, right? While guilt asks the child to reflect on how a specific behavior missed the mark, right? It's a motivator. Why,
Mm-hmm.
so, oh, I wish you would have done this instead. Now, next time they may elicit this behavior that we don't want to happen, they may make a better choice, right? They may make amends. And I guess in the article, they pointed to a study in which toddlers were given a rag doll and the left leg would fall off while they were playing, right? The shame-prone toddlers avoided the researchers and did not volunteer when they broke the doll. They didn't tell people about it. Oh, sorry. But the guilt-prone toddlers were. They would let them know, like, oh, this broke and there's an accident, things like that, because they weren't shameful about it. It was an accident. Things happen, right?
Yeah, so that kind of gets into even shame and guilt-based cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And in those shame-based cultures, the last thing you want to do is to disappoint your significant other or your elders, right? And so it kind of shows the difference that guilt is more of I think what you said, Chris, a motivator.
And shame has long-lasting and deep-seating roots, right? I mean, if you don't think you're a good person and you are, that leads to what? Imposter syndrome, and it leads to all these different things down the road because you've possibly been told or you have interpreted things that have been said to you in a way that you perceive yourself to be bad, right? And that's not what we want. That doesn't create conducive adults, functional adults, confident adults, anything like that, or children for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
So this really ties in with the first one, right? Instead of saying that, you should be ashamed of yourself for this, right? Let's talk about the specific thing that, they should probably feel guilty about, let's discuss that and why you shouldn't do this or engage in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree completely. Another great one, also pick up Dr. Adam Grant's books. Think Again is one that I read all the time. It is a phenomenal way to kind of rethink things and to approach problems in a different way, in a different manner. But all right, Joel, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So the next one, it talks about building your child's self-worth and making them sort of a helper and making them get involved in daily tasks around the house. And that's a way to really build up their self-worth. I think that also translates into, as they start to get older and wanting to take on more responsibility, like getting a job for themselves, and then later on in life, getting a career and getting into college and things like that. Start off young. The author actually talked about how they didn't really do this when they were parenting their kids at a young age. They didn't really get them involved in a lot of things around the house, like tasks of washing the dishes and taking out the trash and those things. Like as kids start to get in their teen years, they don't want to do this stuff anyway, and they're going to complain and all that stuff. But it is important to start getting your kids involved in things around the house at a young age, and you can certainly make it fun for them. Whether it's cleaning their room, and I mean, nobody wants to walk into your room at 18, 19, 20 years old and it's a mess, right? So you got to start. Yeah,
Smells? What are we doing here, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it teaches them now sorts of things when you start to get into college and stuff, and you have roommates and things like that. Make sure your space is clean. Make sure that you take responsibility for your stuff, and that builds up their self-worth, especially as they start to get older.
I think so. My son is super into helping out, which is a good thing. But also, one of the main, and I may be increasing one of two things, either anxiety or ultra competitiveness in my kid. He's 3. But everything we do is a race, right? Because that's how we can get him to, he could be in the middle of a tantrum, and if I say, I'm going to beat you, he immediately gets up and sprints wherever he needs to go, right? But I do wonder about the long-term effects of doing this, of always racing my child to any place in the world. Because there's a point where he gets angry if he doesn't win. So now we're are we increasing over competitiveness? But I use that to kind of our advantage for doing chores, and he always wants to do chores. He always wants to help with laundry. He always wants to help with doing the dishes. He wants to help cook. He wants to mix. He loves mixing things. So if you got a bowl and a spoon and you can put some crap in there, he will mix it all day for you. Doesn't mean he's good at any of these things. Honestly, he's not. but he tries very hard, and I guess that's what we appreciate. And he's trying.
Hey,
Yeah.
I think a lot. Go ahead, Brooke.
Well, I was just going to say, like raising a son is different because we couldn't really use competition with our daughter per se. So,
but I said this might not be a
little
thing.
different.
In 15 years, we'll talk again.
I see my brothers and our sisters, raising their sons, and a lot of them race.
Yeah, it's racing all day. Kids love to run. They can do that.
I used to try to make up excuses. I would be like, it makes me dizzy when I have to sweep the floor and stuff like that. I try to make up things so I could get out of it, but
if I had to do a chore that I didn't want to do when I was younger, I would purposely do it so poorly that it would be easier for my parents to do it instead.
I do that now at home.
Yeah, right? It's a legit strategy. It's a victimless crime.
So the other thing that parents do that they do well is discussing emotions. I don't know about you guys, but I get a lot of parents who talk to me about, my kid doesn't understand emotions. My kid doesn't understand what they're feeling when they're upset or when they're mad or when they're angry, when they have these big emotions. And I think part of that is because we've got to develop that language, and we've got to be instrumental in helping them to recognize the cause and effect of behavior and emotions. So, some strategies to use here might be just reading books with kids, and then commenting on the pictures and commenting on what you might think are some of the emotions or feelings that some of the characters in the books might have. We can even attribute inanimate objects to having emotions and feelings sometimes. So comment. I mean, even if you've got I don't know. I'm thinking this is just off the top of my head, but the pigs. Was it the wolf that blew the house down?
The three little pigs? Are you talking about the three little pigs?
I am so bad with like fairy tales and fables and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Aesop would be disappointed.
Yeah, whoever he is. Give some feeling to the house. How do you think the house felt when it was being blown down? Do you think the house was in pain? Do you feel like the house was sad? And so once we've got to start using those vocabulary words in order to help kids build their own emotional development and their own emotional vocabulary.
Well, I think that also extends to like tantrums, right? So when our child has tantrums, we discuss those feelings, not like, and there are times where he can't have a conversation with us. He's throwing, so we're like, we understand that you're feeling frustrated and that you're angry right now. Whenever you're ready, we can talk. So you can just take a minute, right? And he does. He'll just take a minute and he'll cry and he'll kind of do his thing. And then once he settles down, we still label those feelings, right? We label those emotions. All right, Brooke, you're calm now. Are you ready to talk? And then they'll be like, yes or no or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, we want him to have some agency and we want him to be able to articulate his needs. But that's a big thing is like, all right, if you're ready to talk now because you're calm, we can have a conversation or we can talk about what you're feeling right now. And I think that helps with at least, like you said, identifying those emotions and being able to work through them a little bit easier, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what, I said at the very first, labeling behaviors. And so we're going to do the same thing with emotions. We're going to label those emotions rather than the child.
Absolutely. Well, the last one is something that I think is very difficult for most parents to not do, which is bribery. We try to avoid bribery at all costs. It's very easy to give up and to just give a child something and resort to that bribery so that we can stop whatever behavior you want to happen. I don't know how many times I've been in a store and my child is throwing a giant fit and I'm like, all right, in my mind, I'm like, just give him the thing so that he'll stop. Because now everybody's looking at us, except for the other parents who are like, nah, that was like last Tuesday for me, and you can always tell who the parents are in any store because they'll just ignore you while the other ones are like, what is going on over there? But yeah, it's very difficult to do that. I don't know, Brooke, were you successful at this growing up?
So
Or
I
like being
always,
a parent?
yeah, and I think it's really important to clarify the difference between reinforcement and bribery. And so, what I have told, and this is usually a conversation that I have with my own mother, when it comes to to her being a grandmother to my nephews and to
Rules
our
don't apply
daughter.
to grandmas, Brooke.
Yes, they do. She always says, you can't bribe them for that, and I'm like, remember that bribery is paying somebody to do something that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we do is reinforcement. And reinforcement is when we provide some sort of a consequence, right, that increases the likelihood or the probability of that behavior occurring again in the future.
Right.
So Joel, you've gone through all the applied behavior analysis courses. Did I get that definition correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and not begging your kid to, can you please be good? I'll give you a Hershey bar instead of, but yes, providing some, positive or negative reinforcement is definitely different from bribing your child to behave.
Well, how about it? Let's do this. Let's do a little practice, right? Since Brooke and I are both parents of kids with different ages, Joel, give us a scenario and let's see how we would react in those situations.
Okay, let's see. So
Sorry, Brooke, this was not planned.
That's tough, man. You're putting him on the spot.
Well, I think we're putting ourselves on the spot too. Joel just gets to think of a fun scenario where a kid's throwing a tantrum. You and I have to actually react to it.
Well, I feel like we should stall a little bit for Joel while he's coming up with a scenario.
Did you not think this is what we were already doing in general? And we're just waiting for Joel to give us the symbol that he's ready to go?
No. Here we go. So you pull up to the car dealership in your broken down soccer van, and you're looking for another car. It's 110 degrees outside. The air conditioner is not working, and you get out. You're talking to the salesperson, the car salesperson, and your kid starts throwing a tantrum right in the broken down van. And you can't negotiate the way that you want to negotiate. How do you deal with that?
Can we take the kid out of the van since the AC isn't working and we don't want to feel like...
Let's put the kid on the side of the van.
Okay, good. Just so we can I
was going to say the windows will roll down, but yeah.
110 degrees ain't going to help, buddy.
So what do we do? I'm taking him into the sales manager's office and just leaving him there.
I think generally what I would do is I would separate ourselves from whatever conversation I'm having and kind of get down on the child's level. I'm acting like my child who's only 3. Okay, I'm not acting like a 16-year-old kid. And I would tell him the same thing I said before. Is like, I understand you're frustrated. Can you tell me what's the matter? And if he can't have that conversation yet, I'm going to say, I'm going to leave you here for a minute. When you're ready to talk, let's talk. And we can talk about things whenever you're calm. And hopefully
it's because it's hot and I want to leave. And I want ice cream.
Well, we're not going to be able to get ice cream because it's hot and it's going to melt. What we can do is we can go inside of this building and have a conversation inside. And so now we're transitioning and we're reinforcing and we're listening. We're hearing our child's needs, but we're not giving into everything, right? We're now transitioning into an AC. If there's no AC inside, then we're going to a different dealership. We're probably in a shady place, right? But my assumption is this is like big box car company place. So we're going inside and now we have AC. We're cooling down a little bit. I'm going to hold and comfort my child and kind of get them to the point where we need to be. Now, when we start to become calm, I may then reinforce that calming with something that I know he's going to enjoy. It's not going to be ice cream, and it's not necessarily going to, like, at least in my world, it's not like a phone. I'm not going to give him a phone to like play on. But once we get to that point, there may be, because I usually have our little like backpack full of stuff in there. It's got reinforcement stuff in there. It's got snacks and stuff. But I'm only going to give that once he becomes calm, right? Now, I'm also talking with the sense that I know my child, right? and I know my child has a limit that he'll go to, and then he will become calm. Sometimes those kids will just push and push and push and push, and that's a scenario that I haven't necessarily had to deal with yet. Brooke, would you alter anything?
That's gonna sound very similar to what I would do. I might have taken them to the restroom and had a talk in private. And maybe even threatened some corporal punishment. But I think, here's one thing that we were certainly aligned on. I would have I definitely have reinforcers with me. Maybe that's a bottle of bubbles. It could be some stickers. It's not something that has a lot of value. And I think that's important for parents to recognize that it doesn't have to be big. It's not a trip to Six Flags. It's not chocolate cake. This is really, you don't have to spend a lot of money or invest a lot in order to reinforce behavior. Now, remember, what I'm trying to reinforce is I'm reinforcing the silence. Mm-hmm. And so the moment that I recognize that there is silence, that's when I'm going to say, good job. Good job, Michael, being calm. Here's some bubbles. And then a little bit later, I'm going to intermittently do it again with maybe something else.
Yeah.
And so
what's intermittent mean?
Maybe randomly. It's not every 5 minutes, or it's just going to be at a different time period, and it's when the child can't expect it. So when we think about a slot machine reinforces us intermittently. We never know when that's going to happen.
Or ever.
But it does. As long as we're pulling the handle, it will at some point reinforce us. And so we want to use that kind of strategy with our kids as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Joel, did we satisfy this scenario?
I think so. I think that the audience will definitely get the difference between bribery and reinforcement.
Well, I think we hit on a bunch of the things too. We discussed emotions. We talked about how we're going to discuss emotions in that scenario. We're going to build self-worth. We talk about staying calm and reinforcing that. We're using guilt, not shame, for Brooks in the bathroom. And we're focusing on the behavior. We talked about what the behavior is that we want to decrease. And once that happened, we reinforce the other behavior. So, boom, I think we nailed it. Let us know if we did it in the comments. And that's okay if we didn't. We love your guys' opinions and maybe what you would do differently. So another new thing we're going to kind of bring is question of the day. So Joel has procured a list of questions that he has developed over years and years and years. I believe he's up to about 100 million at this point.
That's right.
So we will have plenty to do. So we're very excited about that. And so he's going to pose a question, and we're not going to answer it. And we're going to see if anybody can answer it in the comments. And then we'll just see how many people get it right. But go ahead, Joel.
Okay, so this is a true or false question. And it is: the U.S. Department of Education has determined that a review of students' academic records is an outdated practice in the field of school psychology. So let us know in the comment section, what do you think, true or false?
All right. Good question. All right. And now we want to thank you guys all for joining us again here today. We try to bring you the best information at all times. And, we want to kind of keep you guys up to date on things that we think and things we may be experienced about. Look for us next episode, episode 4. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome. You guys have anything last minute things to say before we head off?
No, I don't. This is a good show. This is a good episode. I enjoy being with you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and have a great week.
I can't wait for us to disagree about something.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit because we always have pre-meetings beforehand, so we already know what everybody's going to say going into it. But when that day comes, it will be a definite fiery debate. And remember, people, be the reason somebody smiles today. That little conversation can go a long way with somebody else.